The stars were dying, not slowly, not quietly, but with a rhythm that made the universe shiver. Entire systems trembled as the balance of light and dark shifted. It was in this trembling cosmos that she appeared, Serena, a celestial diplomat sent to negotiate peace between warring factions of the galaxy. She had done everything possible. She had spoken to kings, to emperors, to warlords whose names had never been written in any history book, and still the war continued, like a virus spreading across stars and planets, consuming everything in its path. One night, on the edge of a barren moon, she received the signal. A single pulse of light unlike anything she had ever seen. It was not from any empire, not from any council. It was human. The human's name was Kale. He was not a soldier. He was not trained to fight for galaxies. He was a courier, an ordinary man who carried messages between worlds, who had survived disasters no army could predict, who somehow remained alive when everything else fell apart. When Serena found him, he was alone on a crumbling station orbiting a dead planet, his ship scarred and battered, his hands raw from repairs, his eyes tired but bright. She approached him not with authority, but with the desperate hope of someone who had seen centuries of failure. "Kale," she said, voice steady but tinged with urgency. "I need your help. The galaxy is on the edge of annihilation. Entire worlds could fall if we do not act." Kale looked at her, hesitant. His life had been survival, not heroism, but there was something in her gaze, a truth that pierced through doubt. I'm just a man," he said. "I've carried messages. That's all I know. How can I stop worlds from dying?" Serena's hand hovered over a console, showing him maps of star systems, timelines of conflict, fleets moving like predators through space. "It's not just fleets," she said. "It's fear, hatred, ignorance, and sometimes one choice, one act can change everything." "You can be that choice," Kyle shook his head. "I'm not a hero. Heroes are made by circumstance," she replied softly. "But courage is chosen. That is what I am asking of you." For a long moment he said nothing. The hum of the dying station filled the silence. Then he nodded. Not with certainty, not with bravado, but with a decision. "I'll try," he whispered. And so it began. Their journey took them through crumbling space stations, through fleets on the verge of war, through planets where entire civilizations had vanished. Kale learned to navigate not only ships and coordinates, but the intricate web of trust that held factions together. He carried messages of peace and hope, but he also carried something Serena could not give: the courage to act when no one else would. They were hunted, betrayed, and tested beyond any human endurance. Yet in every challenge, Kale made choices that defied logic. He saved entire convoys with impossible maneuvers, convinced generals to stand down with words that carried weight beyond their apparent simplicity, and remained steadfast when all seemed lost. Serena watched him, sometimes in awe, sometimes in disbelief. He was ordinary, yes, but he was also extraordinary, not because of power, but because of heart. One night, on the bridge of an abandoned orbital station, Serena finally allowed herself to speak the truth she had hidden behind diplomacy and strategy. "You are not just a man," she said. "You are the reason the galaxy can still hope." Kyle looked out at the stars, countless lights blinking across the void. "Hope, it feels fragile." "It is," she said. "Fragile, yes, but enough to survive if someone dares to protect it. That someone is you." The universe trembled. The factions watched. And one man, a human, alone, underestimated, seemingly insignificant, chose to carry the fate of worlds. No one expected it, and that choice would echo across time. The galaxy was not kind to those who chose hope. Kyle and Serena traveled from one star system to another, each more dangerous than the last. Some planets had been abandoned, civilizations reduced to whispers in the void. Others were caught in constant war, their skies filled with fire, their oceans poisoned by weapons no human mind should have conceived. Everywhere they went, Kale faced choices no ordinary man could bear. He had to negotiate between factions that had long ago forgotten trust, carry intelligence across fleets that would kill without hesitation, and confront enemies who saw mercy as weakness. And yet, with every decision, every small act of courage, Kale defied the impossible. One evening, aboard a battered shuttle dodging through a meteor storm, Serena turned to him. "You've saved 3 convoys today," she said, voice strained from hours of navigation. How do you keep going? Kyle wiped sweat from his brow and looked at the stars racing past. I keep thinking, if I don't, no one will. Not for them, not for anyone, and I promised myself I wouldn't let them down. Serena's eyes softened. She had seen champions before, beings of great power and intellect, but none like him. He was human, fragile, exhausted, and yet unyielding. Their next mission brought them to the outskirts of the Ashen Nebula, a dangerous sector where rival fleets waged battle for control of rare energy resources. Entire starports had been destroyed, ships floating like broken toys in the void. Intelligence suggested a secret meeting of commanders there, a chance to broker a fragile ceasefire. Serena prepared her diplomatic tools, simulations and projections, but Kale had no advantage except instinct. They descended into the nebula, navigating gravitational anomalies and clouds of ionized gas. Every decision had to be perfect. One wrong move could ignite war on a galactic scale. A sudden ambush forced Kale to take the helm, maneuvering the shuttle through collapsing debris and enemy fire. His hands moved faster than thought, making split-second decisions that bent physics and logic. Serena could only watch, heart pounding, as this ordinary human danced between death and victory. When they finally landed, battered and exhausted, Kale faced a council of alien generals who sneered at the sight of a single human delivering ultimatums and solutions. They mocked him, tested his patience, threatened to destroy Serena's people for daring to negotiate with one so insignificant. Kyle stood tall, not with arrogance, but with certainty. I am not here to fight your prejudices, he said, voice steady. I am here because lives are at stake. Choose peace or choose destruction. The consequences are yours to bear. The room fell silent. No one had expected a human to speak with such clarity, such unwavering courage. Slowly, the generals lowered their weapons. A fragile ceasefire was agreed upon, not because Kyle had power, but because he had heart, and because the truth of mortality touched even the hardest of beings. Later, Serena watched him sleep, exhausted yet unbroken, in the quiet corner of the shuttle. She whispered almost to herself, "You're not supposed to be a hero, and yet you are everything the galaxy needs." Kale stirred, eyes opening. "I don't feel like a hero," he said. "I feel scared, and tired, and unsure, but I also feel that if I don't try, then nothing else matters. Hope matters even if it's fragile." That night, the stars over the Ashen Nebula burned brighter, as if recognizing the courage of a single human who had dared to hold them all accountable. And yet, far beyond the nebula, a dark presence stirred. Not a person, not a fleet, something older, something that had watched galaxies fall before humans even existed. It had sensed the spark of hope Kale carried, the choice he had made against impossible odds. It whispered to the void, "A human dares to change the outcome." This must not be allowed. Kyle was unaware. He was exhausted, hungry, worried about Serena, and burdened by responsibility. But he was alive. And alive meant he could fight again and again. Because for him, the impossible was not a limit. It was a choice, and every choice he made, no matter how small or impossible, became the heartbeat of a galaxy on the edge of destruction. The galaxy held its breath. Kale had faced impossible odds before, yet nothing compared to what awaited them now. Across multiple star systems, fleets moved like predators, tearing planets apart in a frenzy of war. Entire civilizations vanished under firestorms, leaving only whispers in the void. The delicate ceasefire they had fought so hard to negotiate was collapsing. Serena's people trembled with fear, yet she remained calm on the bridge of their ship. Her eyes followed Kyle, who moved with steady hands over the controls, charting impossible courses, calculating maneuvers no simulation had predicted. "You can't do this alone," she said quietly. Kyle shook his head, eyes fixed on the horizon of collapsing stars. "I have to. If I hesitate even for a moment, everything dies. Not tomorrow, not in some distant future, now." They entered the heart of the conflict, a swirling nebula of plasma storms and collapsing moons. Enemy fleets ambushed them, weapons flaring like dying suns. Kale piloted through the chaos, dodging annihilation by inches, saving ships that were moments from destruction. Each decision carried weight beyond human comprehension. One misstep and billions would perish. But Kyle did not falter. He remembered the lesson Serena had taught him. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. Compassion is not weakness, but the force that binds the galaxy together. And hope. Hope, fragile as it may be, is stronger than fleets, stronger than weapons, stronger than time itself. During a desperate maneuver, their ship's engines overloaded. Plasma fire licked the hull. Alarms blared. Serena gripped the edge of the console. "I can do this," Cale whispered to himself, voice shaking but resolute. "I have to do this." With a maneuver so daring it defied all known physics, he steered the ship through the storm, weaving between asteroids and debris, carrying not just their lives, but the lives of countless others depending on them. When the battle finally subsided, Cale had done more than survive, he had turned the tide. Fleets that once fought blindly were now disoriented, their leaders realizing that continued aggression would lead to mutual destruction. Kyle and Serena sent messages calling for surrender, offering a path to peace. Serena watched him and felt awe and fear intermingled. He was still human, weak by all measures, but stronger than anyone she had ever known. That night, under the fractured light of two suns, Kyle collapsed in exhaustion. Serena stayed by his side, placing her hand over his, feeling the warmth that had somehow carried them through the impossible. "You've done the unimaginable," she whispered. Cale looked up, exhausted and covered in grime. I just kept moving. One step, one decision, one chance, but the galaxy—" "You saved it," she said. He shook his head, tired smile forming. "No, the galaxy saved itself. I was just a human brave enough to act." But far away, beyond the remnants of war, something stirred, something older than any civilization. A shadow that had watched galaxies collapse and rise again. It had sensed Cale's choices, the spark of courage and hope he carried, and it whispered to the void, "This cannot continue. This human must be stopped." Cale did not know it yet. He did not see the danger approaching from beyond the stars, but he was alive. He was human. And humans, despite all odds, had a stubborn way of surviving. Serena leaned close, her voice barely above a whisper. "No matter what comes, you will not face it alone." Kyle took her hand, gripping it tightly, and looked out at the stars. "Then we fight together. And if we fall, at least we stood for something worth believing in." The galaxy trembled, and the impossible continued to unfold. And one human, a courier, a man with nothing but courage and heart, remained the fulcrum upon which the fate of worlds balanced. Because hope was not just a word. It was a choice. And Cale had chosen it. The galaxy's edge burned with fire. Cale and Serena approached the heart of the conflict, a massive, unstable sector where fleets from multiple systems converged, each seeking dominance. Entire planets teetered on the brink of annihilation. Asteroids collided like cannonballs. Debris filled the void, and distant stars flickered as if mourning the chaos. Serena's calm mask was tested. She had navigated negotiations, threats, and betrayals, but now the stakes were no longer abstract. Entire civilizations could vanish in minutes. She turned to Cale, whose hands were steady on the controls despite exhaustion, determination etched on his face. "They'll overwhelm us," she said softly. Cale's jaw tightened. "Maybe, but we have to try. There's no other way." They plunged into the storm. Ships attacked from every angle, weapons blazing like dying suns. Cale piloted through plasma storms, weaving between explosions, saving convoys and civilians trapped in the chaos. Every maneuver pushed the shuttle beyond its limits, yet he refused to falter. The enemy leader, a shadowed being of immense power, appeared on sensors, an intelligence older than any known species. It mocked Cale, confident that a single human could not sway the tide of war. But Cale was no longer just a human courier. He had learned the weight of courage, the force of hope, and the meaning of sacrifice. With Serena guiding diplomacy remotely, Cale executed impossible strategies. Fleets that had seemed unstoppable faltered, their cohesion shattered by the precision of a human mind fueled by heart, not arrogance. Planets once destined for destruction were evacuated in time, thanks to his daring maneuvers. Yet the cost was immense. The shuttle sustained heavy damage. Systems failed. Shields flickered dangerously. Cale knew he would not survive another direct attack. Serena approached him, voice trembling. "Cale, you've done enough. We can retreat, regroup. There's still hope without risking yourself further." Cale shook his head. eyes fixed on the horizon of battle. If I stop now, everything we've fought for dies. Not tomorrow, not later, now. This is the moment we either save worlds or lose them forever. The enemy unleashed a weapon of unimaginable force, a supernova pulse aimed directly at the fleet. Every shield in the sector strained, ships exploded like fireworks in the void. Kale's shuttle was caught in the blast radius, and for a heartbeat, all seemed lost. Then he made the choice. He diverted every ounce of the shuttle's power into a daring maneuver, steering the ship through the pulse, creating a temporary gravitational shield that saved nearby ships and dissipated the weapon's energy. The maneuver nearly destroyed the shuttle and would have killed any ordinary human. Kyle survived, barely, but the price was clear. The shuttle was wrecked, systems failing, and life support barely functioning. Serena reached him instantly, her hand steadying him as he collapsed. "You did it," she whispered, tears forming. "You saved them all." Kyle's breath was ragged. "We did it together." And then, as silence settled over the battlefield, something miraculous occurred. The lives they had saved, the hope Kale had inspired, resonated through the universe in a ripple of energy. A luminous wave of light spreading from star system to star system. The enemy fleets were overwhelmed not by weapons, but by the awakening of conscience and courage in those who had followed blindly. The shadowed leader vanished, defeated not by force, but by the collective realization that the galaxy itself would no longer tolerate annihilation. Kale and Serena floated amidst the aftermath, the shuttle barely holding together. Exhausted, battered, yet alive, they watched as worlds once doomed now shimmered with life. Cities glowed, rivers sparkled, and stars pulsed gently in gratitude. Serena placed her hand over Kyle's. "You returned the impossible," she said softly. Kyle looked up at her, faint smile forming. "We returned it, together. That's all anyone can do." The universe had shifted. Entire civilizations now knew the power of courage and hope carried by a single human. Kyle was ordinary in body, but extraordinary in choice. And in that choice he had done what no one expected. He had returned the galaxy from the brink of extinction. As the stars settled into calm, Kyle and Serena drifted in silence. Their hearts, heavy with fatigue but full of triumph, understood the truth they had uncovered. The impossible is never defeated. It is only waiting for someone brave enough to act. And in that moment, hope became more than a word. It became a force eternal and unyielding, carried forward by the heart of one human who dared to choose it. The galaxy breathed again, slowly, like a wounded creature finally finding air. Kale and Serena floated above a planet once scorched by war, now shimmering with tentative life. Cities that had burned were being rebuilt. Rivers that had boiled with fire now flowed gently, carrying the reflection of twin suns. Across star systems, survivors returned to their homes, each step a quiet victory, each laugh a rebellion against despair. Kale walked through the streets of a recovered city, hands covered in dust from helping rebuild homes. Children ran past him, laughter spilling into the air like music, and for a brief moment he allowed himself to smile without guilt. He had saved worlds, yes, but the real victory was in the small things, life returning, hearts opening, hope persisting. Serena stood beside him, watching with quiet pride. She had once relied on diplomacy, on strategy, on the wisdom of civilizations, but in the end it had been one human, fragile, ordinary, yet unshakably courageous, who had restored balance. "You did more than survive," she said softly. "You reminded them what it means to care." Kyle shook his head. "I didn't remind anyone, I just did what had to be done. If no one else had the courage, then someone had to." And yet the universe had noticed. Across countless worlds, stories began to emerge, not of weapons or fleets, but of a human who chose hope. People began speaking of Kale in hushed reverence, not as a god or hero, but as a reminder that even the smallest choices carry immense weight. Meanwhile, Serena traveled to neighboring systems, guiding leaders, mediating disputes, and teaching them what Kale had demonstrated: that courage is infectious, and hope is a living force that grows when nurtured by action. Months passed and the galaxy slowly healed. Trade routes reopened, diplomacies reformed. Children who had only known war now played under the stars, their laughter mingling with the light of distant suns. One evening, as Kale sat beside a river of starlight, He noticed a small child holding a glowing pendant shaped like a star. The child looked at him wide-eyed and curious. "Are you the human?" the child asked. Cale chuckled softly. "I am just someone who tried to help." The child's eyes sparkled. "You saved the worlds. My parents say hope comes from you." Cale's heart ached with humility. No, hope doesn't come from one person. It comes from every person who chooses to act even when it's hard, even when it seems impossible. The child nodded slowly, understanding more than words could explain. Serena joined them, placing a gentle hand on Kyle's shoulder. "The story isn't over," she said. "It continues in them, in everyone who learns to hope because of what you did." Cale looked up at the stars shining brighter than ever. He realized that victory was not a moment but a process, that hope was not a gift but a responsibility, and that the legacy of his choices would ripple across generations, far beyond what he could ever imagine. As the twin suns set, casting golden and violet light across the city, Cale stood, placing the small glowing pendant into the child's hands. "Carry it with you," he said softly. "Not because it's powerful, but because it reminds you that even one person can make a difference." The child smiled, eyes wide with understanding, and across the galaxy, in the quiet moments between stars, hope continued to grow, nurtured by the courage of one human who had dared to act, and the presence of the celestial diplomat who had believed in him. Years passed quietly, like gentle waves reshaping distant shores. Cale had become a figure known not for power or conquest, but for courage, for the quiet choice to act when all odds seemed impossible. Serena remained by his side, a constant presence, guiding, supporting, reminding him that even the smallest acts could echo across galaxies. The universe had healed, but not without scars. Some worlds remained fragile, civilizations wary, and the memory of war still lingered in the silence between stars. Yet hope had taken root. It had spread, nurtured not by force or legend, but by the choices of countless beings inspired by Cale's courage. One day, on a hill overlooking a city restored to life, Cale watched children playing among gardens of glowing plants and starlit fountains. The air was warm, filled with laughter and music. Yet beneath it all, he sensed the pulse of the universe, the heartbeat of countless lives, each one safer because he had dared to act. Serena joined him quietly. "Do you ever wonder if it was all worth it?" she asked. Cale looked out over the horizon, where the rivers of light stretched across continents and spaceports shimmered with energy. Every choice, every risk, every impossible decision, yes, it was all worth it. A new generation had begun to rise. Children who never knew war now grew into leaders, thinkers, and dreamers, carrying the lessons of courage, hope, and love in their hearts. People spoke not just of Cale, but of what he represented. The power of one human to spark change, the proof that even against impossible odds, life could prevail. Far across the galaxy, fleets no longer sought domination. Former enemies now worked together to rebuild, to protect, to learn. And in quiet corners of the universe, stars pulsed faintly, as if echoing the warmth of a human heart that once chose to fight for hope. Kyle and Serena walked through the restored streets of the city, hands brushing, eyes lifted to the sky. "The story isn't just ours anymore," Serena said softly. "No," Cale replied, voice steady and full of peace. "It belongs to everyone who chooses to act, to care, to hope. That's the legacy." As night fell, the twin moons reflected off the rivers and fountains, creating trails of silver light across the city. Cale knelt beside a small child who held a pendant shaped like a star, the same shape he had once carried. "Carry this," he whispered, not as a symbol of power, but as a reminder. One person can change everything. The child's eyes glimmered with understanding, and Cale smiled. He felt the weight of years lift from his shoulders. The galaxy was alive. Hope was alive. And love, patient, enduring, unyielding, would continue long after he was gone. Serena rested her hand on his shoulder. "We've done what we could," she said, her voice full of quiet triumph. Cale nodded, gazing at the horizon where stars glittered like distant promises. "Yes, and now it's their turn." The camera of imagination pulls back across cities, planets, and star systems glowing in peaceful harmony. Rivers of starlight flow through worlds, connecting lives, carrying the memory of courage and hope. The universe breathes, alive, vibrant, and free. The story ends not with a battle, not with a triumph over an enemy, but with a quiet, Enduring truth. Hope is stronger than fear. Love is stronger than hate, and the choices of one heart can ripple across galaxies, inspiring countless others. Kale and Serena stand together, small but infinite in their courage, watching the universe they helped save. The stars pulse softly like a heartbeat. The wind carries whispers of laughter, of music, of life, and the impossible is remembered not as a tale but as the living, breathing universe itself. The end.